My name is Margaret Hensley, 70 years old, and on my birthday, my children gifted me my own house. They called it a surprise. Balloons on the front steps, a banner that read, 70 and still our queen, a string quartet squinting at sheet music they'd never seen before. Ben kissed my cheek like a politician. Sophie held a flute of champagne and a photographer by the sleeve. "Smile, Mom," she said. "This one's going on the foundation page." "What foundation?" I asked. "You'll love it," she said, already walking away. People I'd fed for decades drifted through my kitchen like tourists. The cake was shaped like my porch. Someone had iced tiny shutters in pale blue, the same color my husband had painted 25 years ago. I was cutting the first slice when a man I didn't know clapped Ben on the back. "Congratulations on the transfer. Cleanest gift deed I've ever seen. Your mom's a class act." Ben's eyes flicked to me, then away. "We keep things simple," he said. I set the knife down. "What transfer?" Sophie appeared with 2 glasses. "Nothing to spoil the mood," she sang. "Drink." "I asked a question," I said. Ben's smile didn't move. "Later, Mom. Enjoy your night." I walked to the den. On the console sat a stack of embossed folders. One peeked open, Hensley Family Estate Simplification. Inside, a photocopy of my signature under a paragraph I'd never read. Gift deed, 14 Willow Lane to beneficiary, Benjamin Hensley. I touched the signature. The loop on the G looked familiar because it was lifted from the birthday cards I'd been writing since he was 5. Sophie slid into the doorway, all glitter and nerve. "You weren't supposed to see that yet." "You forged my name." She laughed softly. "Oh, Margaret, donors call it legacy, lawyers call it efficient. We call it keeping you in the family." "Give me my pen," I said. "For what?" "To unsign." Her smile sharpened. "You really want to ruin this? All your friends are here." I stepped past her. In the hallway, our pastor shook my hand. "So generous," he said. "You've set an example for the whole church." "What did Ben tell you?" "That you gifted the home for succession. Wise stewardship." I looked at my son across the room, lifted on a small platform, thanking everyone for coming. Sophie held his elbow like a leash. The photographer counted down for another pose. I took the microphone from the DJ without asking. "Ben," I called. "A word." The room hushed the way rooms do when they smell a storm. He kept the grin. "Mom, say hi to everyone." "Hi," I said. "Did you ask me before you moved my house into your name?" The grin cracked. Someone laughed, then stopped. Sophie raised her glass. "It's a celebration," she said brightly. "Mom is kidding. She knows we're just formalizing the plan." "What plan?" I asked. Ben's voice went warm and public. "Estate simplification. It's what you wanted." "No," I said. "What I wanted was a birthday party that didn't end with a burglary." A cousin coughed. The pastor looked at his shoes. Sophie leaned into the mic. "Mom, you signed." I raised the folder. "I recognize my signature the way I recognize my own hands. This is a copy from last year's birthday card. You traced me." Murmurs. Phones lifted. The violinist put down her bow. Ben took a step off the platform, palms out. "Let's not do this in front of..." "In front of who?" I said. "The notary who rubber-stamped a party trick? The banker who thought cake equals consent?" Sophie's voice dropped, sweet as venom. "Be careful." "Say it louder," I replied, "for the guests you invited to witness my generosity." A man in a navy suit, someone from a title company, cleared his throat. "If the donor signed voluntarily..." "She didn't," I said. "She was slicing cake." Ben tried to laugh it off. "Mom, please." "Please what?" I said. "Keep smiling while you take the roof over my head?" Silence. Even the ice in the glasses went still. I handed the microphone back to the DJ and looked at my son. "You have until Monday to return my deed." Sophie whispered, "Or what?" "Or I host another party," I said, "in your honor." Ben swallowed. "You wouldn't." "You picked the wrong queen," I said, "and the wrong house." I walked to the foyer, past the banner that called me royal, past the shuttered cake I didn't taste. On the table lay a pile of thank you cards with my name printed at the bottom, ready for me to sign. I took a pen and wrote on the top card instead, "This is not a gift. This is a theft dressed as a toast." Then I put the pen in my purse, opened the door to my own porch, and stepped into the night that still remembered my key. The next morning, I drove to Hensley and Company Realty, the office Ben claimed he ran for the family. It was built with my late husband's insurance money, the seed I'd given him to start his career. Now, it felt like walking into a courtroom where I didn't belong. Sophie greeted me at reception, holding a latte and that hollow smile that always meant trouble. "Margaret," she said sweetly, "we weren't expecting you today." "Obviously," I said, "I came to pick up the deed." Her eyebrows flicked up. "The house transfer? It's already filed, public record, congratulations. Take me to Ben." She hesitated, then buzzed him. His voice crackled through the intercom. "Let her in." Ben was on the phone when I entered, talking in that slick tone he used for investors. He hung up, leaned back in his chair, and smiled like I was a difficult client. "Morning, Mom. How's my favorite landlord?" "You forged my name," he chuckled. "You signed it yourself, remember? You were holding the pen." "That was a birthday card," he shrugged. "Same pen, same ink. Intent's what matters." "I never intended to give you my home." "Then maybe you should have read the paperwork before smiling for the camera." I stared at him. "You used my party as a smokescreen." He leaned forward, elbows on the desk. "Mom, stop talking like a courtroom. It's just estate planning. You always said you wanted things simple." "I said I wanted peace," I replied, "not probate." Sophie entered, file in hand. "It's all legal, Margaret. You can't undo it without a civil petition, and that'll drag you through months of hearings. Stress isn't good for you." "I survived cancer," I said. "I can survive you." She smiled. "You'll thank us when the taxes are easier. We're just protecting what's yours by making it ours before someone else does." Ben added, "Think of it as early inheritance." "I wasn't planning to die early," I said. "Everyone plans," he murmured. "Then life edits." For a second I saw it, that glint of pride he'd inherited from his father and twisted into greed. I pulled an envelope from my purse and tossed it onto his desk. "The mortgage receipts, tax payments, maintenance bills, all in my name. If this house is yours, so are these debts." He barely glanced at it. "We'll sort it out." "You already did," I said, "with a fake notary." Sophie froze, Ben's eyes narrowed. "What did you say?" "I checked the registry," I said evenly. "The name on the document doesn't exist. You found someone to stamp it, probably cash under the table. Sloppy, even for you." Ben's smile fell away. "Mom, go home." "I will," I said. "Once I decide which agency to call first, the police or the press." He stood. "You'd ruin your own family?" I met his eyes. "You did that at my birthday." Sophie hissed, "You're overreacting." "No," I said quietly. "I'm just waking up." As I walked out, I passed a wall lined with framed magazine covers. Ben shaking hands with developers. Sophie at a gala. Headlines about the next generation of legacy wealth. I stopped at the one nearest the door, Ben holding a gold plaque that read, "Visionary Investor of the Year." Underneath in smaller text, "Dedicated to my mother, whose faith built everything." I whispered, "Then let faith build your downfall too," and left without waiting for the elevator. The receptionist called after me. "Mrs. Hensley, should I schedule a follow-up?" I didn't look back. "Tell them I'll see them at the closing table," I said. When the signatures actually mean something. By the end of that week, my life was rewritten online. The Hensley Foundation website launched, complete with photos from my party, a mission statement about honoring Mom's legacy, and a donation page showing my own address as its headquarters. The tagline read, "Because family is where every gift begins." I didn't know whether to laugh or scream. My friends started calling. "Margaret, you're incredible," said one. "I saw your son's post, donating your house to support housing for widows. You're a saint." "A what?" I asked. She texted me the link. Ben smiling beside Sophie, both standing on my porch, captioned, "Honoring Mom's wishes by turning her lifelong home into a community foundation." There were 5,000 likes. And a comment from the mayor, "What a generous woman." That word, generous, turned my stomach. I drove to the property office. The clerk pulled up the file and frowned. "The deed transfer was processed fast," she said. "Not many people get same-day approval." Can I see the notary document? I asked. She hesitated, then printed it. I stared at the seal, a circle stamped crookedly, the number barely legible. I knew that sloppiness. It wasn't official ink. It was from a hardware store kit. Ma'am, she said quietly, if this is fraud, you'll need an attorney. It's been notarized, filed, and publicized. That makes it complicated. Complicated, I echoed. That's the word thieves love most. That night, I went home, or what used to be home, and found the locks changed. Ben had texted, "Don't panic. We're renovating the kitchen for the foundation. You can stay at the lakeside condo until it's done." The condo was mine too, though he probably forgot that part. Inside it, the silence was heavier than the marble counters. Every corner felt borrowed. I sat at the table, staring at the only thing they hadn't taken, the ceramic mug Henry gave me when he finished building the porch. To my Margaret, the balance in all books. I whispered to it, "You wouldn't believe what they've done, Henry. Our children turned my name into marketing." When the tears dried, I turned on the TV. There they were, Ben and Sophie, at a ribbon-cutting ceremony held in my backyard. Cameras flashing, reporters cheering. "Mom wanted her home to help others," Sophie said into the mic. "She always believed in giving." Ben added, "She's a woman of numbers, but this gift proves she's also a woman of heart." The audience applauded. The crowd clapped for the theft of my life. I gripped the remote so hard the batteries popped out. I picked up the phone and called David O'Neill, the lawyer who'd helped Henry draft our trust decades ago. He answered on the third ring, voice groggy but warm. "Margaret, it's been years." "David, I need you to tell me something," I said. "What happens if a notary's seal is fake?" He paused. "Then every document stamped with it is void. Why?" "Because my son just built a foundation with stolen bricks," I said. "Can you prove the forgery?" "I have the paper. I just need a microscope and a match." He exhaled. "Bring it tomorrow morning. And Margaret?" "Yes?" "Don't tell them you're coming." When I hung up, I noticed Sophie's post again on my phone. "So proud to carry on Mom's legacy." I stared at her face until the screen dimmed, then whispered, "You stole my legacy, but you forgot what I built it on. Math and memory. And I remember every dollar, every signature, and every lie." I took out Henry's old ledger and opened a fresh page. At the top, I wrote in red ink, "Audit begins tonight." David's office smelled like old wood and paper dust, the kind of place that still believed in ink. He examined the notary seal under a magnifying glass, then looked up. "This isn't even state-certified, Margaret. The number belongs to a notary who died in 2017. "So they used a dead man to steal a living woman's house," he nodded grimly. "They'll claim clerical error, but we can prove intent. The problem is, they've already filed your change of residence. On paper, you're the guest now." I let out a hollow laugh. "The guest in my own life." He slid the paper back to me. "I'll prepare an injunction, but it'll take a week, maybe more." "A week?" "They have money, lawyers, and momentum. Until the hearing, you'll need to keep your distance. No confrontation, no public scenes." "Distance," I said quietly. "That's all they've ever wanted." When I stepped outside, the cold hit like a reprimand. Across the street, a billboard for the Hensley Foundation beamed down at me. Sophie's face smiling beside Ben's, under the slogan, "Turning Heritage into Hope." Hope, what a word to sell. I stopped at a cafe for tea, but when I handed my card, it declined. The cashier tried again, then shook her head. "Sorry, ma'am. It says frozen account." I paid with cash and sat by the window, staring at the foam until it went flat. Outside, people walked with purpose, their lives still under their own names. My phone buzzed, a text from Sophie. "Sophie. Mom, please stop creating drama. We're doing this for your peace of mind." "Sophie, the press will twist things if you keep fighting us. Just rest. The house is in good hands." I typed back one sentence and deleted it, then another. Nothing sounded right. Nothing would make them human again. That night, I went back to the lakeside condo. They'd already sent movers to pick up the last of my things. My closet stood empty except for a single cardigan on a hanger. The air smelled like new paint, Sterile, not mine. I sat on the edge of the bed and found a stack of mail on the nightstand. Bills redirected. Insurance canceled. My driver's license renewal stamped pending guardianship verification. I whispered to the empty room, "They're burying me alive in bureaucracy." The next morning, I went for a walk along the frozen lake. The water shimmered with a thin crust of ice, like glass waiting to break. I thought of Henry teaching Ben to fish here when he was 12, how proud he'd looked holding his first catch. I wondered what Henry would say now. Probably something simple like, "Balance the books, Maggie. They can't erase arithmetic." By the time I reached the pier, I'd stopped shaking. Fear was no use anymore. Logic was. That afternoon, I printed every file David needed. I scanned Sophie's social media posts, the property records, the forged signatures. Each click felt like loading bullets in a ledger. When I finished, I opened Henry's old calculator and typed one number, 742,000. That's what my house was worth. Under it, I typed 0. That's what they'd left me with. I hit the subtraction key and whispered, "That's not loss, that's motive." And right then the fog lifted. This wasn't just about getting my house back. It was about reclaiming my arithmetic, the right to count again, under my own name. When I called David that evening, my voice didn't tremble. "I'm done waiting," I said. "File the papers and tell me how to hit them where it hurts." He paused. "In the pocket," he said. "Always start where greed begins." And just like that, the lowest point turned into the first step of war. I woke up the next morning with the ledger open and sunlight cutting across the page. The pages smelled like archives and old coffee. For the first time since the party, there was no fog in my head, only a list. I called Grace and David, organized what I had, and listed the holes in Ben and Sophie's story. The notary seal was fake. The timing of the filing contradicted the event timeline. The bank transfers were routed through an LLC created 2 weeks earlier. The gift language was inconsistent with the original trust. Motive, method, and money. All visible if someone bothered to look. Grace arrived with a legal pad and 2 strong coffees. "We freeze the accounts first," she said without ceremony. "Then we build the public record. People who give will want receipts. If donors see theft instead of charity, they'll pull support." David emailed a list of questions to the county clerk and asked for an expedited affidavit search. "No noise yet," he warned. "We need a clean handoff, injunction, forensic document examination, and a press-ready packet that proves intent." I spent the afternoon at Ben's office, not to confront them, but to collect evidence they thought they'd hidden in plain sight. I took photos of the posted announcement about the foundation's mission, screenshots of donor names, copies of the filing, and the email thread where Sophie asked the title company for fast processing for family transfer. People assume public records can't be edited. They can. You just need to know where to look. That evening, I sat with Henry's old boxes. His handwriting was precise, the way an engineer's is, methodical, unforgiving. I found an old receipt for the original down payment, the canceled checks for porch repairs, and a tiny envelope with a notary card Henry had tucked in years before. In the margin of a note, he had scribbled, "If they ever call this gift, ask for the ink source." I smiled at him and felt a fierce calm. We plotted like accountants at war. Grace would file the temporary injunction to halt the transfer. David would order the forensic analysis of the notary seal. I would reach out to the press, but only after we had immutable proof. "Timing," Grace said. "Expose before the next big donor event. Let them sit under the questions instead of their applause." Ethan, the young IT friend I'd met at community theater, agreed to help with digital footprints. He traced the LLC registration and found it listed under a mailbox in a neighboring county, with a shell director whose name matched a role Sophie used in a charity brochure. He also recovered metadata from the document the title company had uploaded, timestamps misaligned with the party photos. People are sloppy when they think they're clever. That weekend, we pulled the thread tighter. David called the notary registry himself and requested a certification of the stamp number. The reply came back, "No such active notary." Forensic ink analysis was scheduled. Grace filed the injunction citing immediate risk of irreparable harm. "We don't want to be the family in court," she said. "We want to be the family who proves the truth." I wrote the press statement myself, short, precise, and non-sentimental. My name has been used to promote a foundation that benefits from my property. I did not transfer ownership. I value charity, but gifts require consent. We have filed an injunction and are seeking a formal forensic review. I couriered the packet to a local reporter I trusted. If this doesn't stop the auction of my life, I told him, the story will. On Sunday, I went to church and sat in my usual pew. The sermon was about stewardship. I listened but counted the hymn verses under my breath methodically. Faith had a place in my life. Arithmetic had another. They were not enemies. One protected the heart, the other protected the facts. That night, when the house was quiet and the roses folded against early frost, Grace laid out the final plan. Freeze accounts, secure expert certs, file injunction, prepare donor packet, and coordinate a public reveal timed to the next foundation fundraiser. They built an altar with your picture, she said. We're going to bring the receipts. I closed Henry's ledger and wrote one line, sharp as law: prepare the evidence, expose the theft, restore the house. The night before the gala, I didn't sleep. I sat at the condo desk, printing out exhibits and labeling each one with neat little tabs. Forgery, false notary, unauthorized transfer, press packet. By dawn, my kitchen looked like an evidence room. Grace arrived just before sunrise, dressed in navy, calm as steel. Everything's ready, she said. The injunction's filed and the press has a hold notice until your cue. My cue, I repeated, feels theatrical. She smiled faintly. Then give them a performance they'll never forget. By 6 that evening, the Hensley Foundation Gala was in full swing, the chandeliers glowing, waiters circling with trays of champagne, and my son giving interviews about honoring Mom's vision. I stood near the back, unnoticed. They'd turned my living room into a charity stage. Velvet curtains where family photos used to hang. A banner across the mantel that read, "Legacy lives here." Sophie was radiant under the spotlight, her voice sugar-coated for the donors. Margaret's generosity built this foundation, she said. She wanted her home to serve others. I stepped closer, unseen in the crowd. Ben joined her at the podium. My mother taught me integrity. Tonight we keep her promise to give back. The room applauded. Cameras flashed. The taste of betrayal was so sharp it could have sliced glass. When the applause faded, Sophie smiled and said, "And now, the woman who made all this possible, our mother, our inspiration, Mrs. Margaret Hensley." It was supposed to be symbolic, a polite nod, a photo op, but I walked straight to the stage. Ben blinked, confused. Sophie froze mid-smile. I took the microphone. "Thank you," I said. "I am indeed the woman who made this possible, by paying every mortgage, every tax, every brick this house was built with." Nervous laughter rippled through the crowd. Ben tried to take the mic back. "Mom, maybe later." I held it tighter. "No, Benjamin, now." I turned to the audience. "Many of you donated tonight believing this foundation was born from generosity, but generosity isn't forged on hardware store stamps." A murmur spread. Sophie whispered, "What are you doing?" I nodded toward the entrance. David entered with 2 officers and a court clerk carrying a folder. Grace followed, holding a laptop connected to a projector. I gestured to the screen. "This, ladies and gentlemen, is the document my children filed to claim this property as theirs. The notary listed here died 5 years ago." Gasps, cameras clicked, Ben's voice cracked. This is private." "Private," I said. "You made it public the day you invited donors into my living room." Grace clicked play. The screen showed a close-up of the fraudulent seal, then the forensic report beside it. The judge's injunction letter followed, a legal freeze on every Hensley Foundation asset effective immediately. The room went silent. Sophie's hand shook, her champagne glass trembling. Ben's jaw locked tight. "You set us up," he hissed. "No," I said. "You set me up. I just audited the results." A woman from the press stepped forward, microphone raised. "Mrs. Hensley, are you saying this foundation is fraudulent?" I met her gaze. "I'm saying you'll find out the moment you run the numbers." The officers approached quietly. One handed Ben the injunction notice. He read it, face pale. "You can't do this," he whispered. "I already did," I said. The crowd began to murmur again, soft at first, then louder, the sound of reputations collapsing. Sponsors left their tables, donors pulled out their phones. Sophie turned toward me, eyes wide. "You'll regret this." I looked past her to the old portrait of Henry still hanging above the fireplace. "No," I said softly, "I think he'd call it balance." Then I set the microphone down, walked past the cameras and out the front door, leaving my name behind but taking back everything else. By morning, the footage had gone viral. The local paper ran the headline, "Mother Exposes Children's Foundation Fraud Live at Charity Gala." I didn't need to read the article. The phone call said enough. Former friends, donors, neighbors, everyone wanted to know how it felt to humiliate my own family. They didn't understand that humiliation was the only language Ben and Sophie ever respected. Grace called first. "The injunction held. Every asset tied to the foundation is frozen." "And my house?" I asked. "Technically yours again, but they'll fight it. They've hired a crisis PR firm." Of course they had. The headline was only the first battle. Sophie went on local TV that afternoon, tearful and polished. "She's not well," she told the interviewer. "My mother's confused. We were only trying to protect her legacy." I sat on the condo couch watching her crocodile tears streak designer foundation. When the reporter asked, "Did you forge documents?" She didn't blink. "Never. My mother signed everything willingly. She just doesn't remember." That sentence turned the knife. I called Grace. "They're trying to rewrite the story." "Then we give them the sequel," she said. 2 days later, we filed our own press brief. Simple, factual, devastating. Attached were the forensic reports, the fake notary's death certificate, and the digital metadata showing the document was created the morning after my party. While Sophie posted birthday photos online, the narrative cracked. Ben called that night. His voice was shaking. "Mom, please, this is destroying us." "Correction," I said. "It's revealing you." He went quiet, then whispered, "I just wanted to protect the property. Sophie said the foundation would make it untouchable. She said you'd thank us." "And you believed her?" He swallowed. "I wanted to." For a moment, I almost softened down until he said, "If you keep pushing, you'll lose us forever." I replied, "You already sold me once." The hearing came a week later. The courtroom was full. Reporters, donors, half the county curious to see the show. Sophie arrived in cream silk, Ben in a gray suit 2 sizes too big for his new shame. They sat across from me, whispering furiously while their lawyer flipped through binders. When the judge entered, everyone rose. The air was thick enough to choke on. Grace handled most of the questioning. Calm, sharp, relentless. "Mrs. Hensley," the judge said finally, "you claim the transfer was fraudulent?" "Yes, Your Honor," I said. "The notary used was deceased. The document was filed without my consent during an event advertised as my birthday celebration." Grace handed the forensic report to the clerk. "The seal's ink contains polymer inconsistencies, counterfeit, and the date stamp doesn't match the party timeline." The judge raised an eyebrow. "And the defense?" Sophie's lawyer stood. "Your Honor, this is a misunderstanding among family. My clients believed they were acting under their mother's instruction." "Instruction?" I said, standing. "I instructed them to serve cake, not court papers." A ripple of laughter rolled through the gallery. Sophie's composure cracked. "She's twisting everything." The judge rapped his gavel. "Enough. The evidence speaks louder than tears." He turned to me. "Mrs. Hensley, what outcome do you seek?" I looked at Ben, then Sophie. "Justice," I said, "and my name back on my door." When the ruling came, it was clean and final. The transfer voided, all assets returned. The foundation dissolved pending investigation. Sophie buried her face in her hands. Ben just stared at the table. As I walked out, reporters swarmed the steps. One shouted, "Mrs. Hensley, what will you do next?" I smiled faintly. "Balance the books." The crowd laughed softly, the flashbulbs popping like fireworks. Behind me, Sophie screamed, "You ruined us!" I didn't turn around. "No," I said, "you audited yourselves." And for the first time in months, the numbers finally added up. Not in dollars, but in dignity. It took 6 more weeks for the dust to settle. By then, the house was legally mine again, the Hensley Foundation's website shut down, and my bank accounts unfrozen. But the victory didn't feel like triumph. It felt like reconciliation with reality. People stopped by with cautious smiles and casseroles. "You did the right thing," they'd whisper, half proud, half afraid. The church ladies avoided eye contact for a while. Donors demanded refunds. The mayor's office quietly deleted their post calling me our most generous citizen. I didn't care. I only wanted the key. The day I held it again, cold metal pressing into my palm, I realized it wasn't just a house key. It was proof of existence. I unlocked the door to 14 Willow Lane and stepped inside. The place smelled faintly of paint and lilies, a sterile version of the life they'd staged for the gala. On the mantel sat Henry's portrait, crooked. I straightened it. "Welcome home," I whispered to him. Grace stopped by that evening with paperwork. "It's officially over," she said, setting down the file. "You own everything again." I poured her tea. "Own," I repeated. Such a small word for such a long fight. She smiled. "What now?" "I'm thinking of starting a course," I said, "teaching seniors how to read deeds and trust documents, how to spot a forged signature before it costs them their legacy." Grace laughed softly. "Turning revenge into education. Henry would be proud." "Henry would have brought a ledger," I said. Later that night, I opened that ledger one last time. Under the last entry, "Audit complete," I wrote in steady ink, "Outcome, house restored, family dissolved, dignity intact." A week later, I received a letter in the mail. No return address, just a short note written in Ben's careful hand. "Mom, I never meant for it to go this far. Sophie said it was temporary. I didn't know she forged the seal until it was too late. I'm sorry. If forgiveness is too expensive, consider this payment in interest." Inside was a cashier's check for $75,000, exactly what the house had appreciated in market value during their fraud. I folded the note, put it back in the envelope, and filed it in the ledger under closed accounts. That weekend, I hosted my first small workshop at the community library. 8 women showed up, all widows, all carrying folders thicker than mine had been. One of them said, "I saw your story on the news. You're the woman who took her house back?" I smiled. "No," I said. "I'm the woman who balanced her life again." We spent the afternoon going line by line through a sample deed, highlighters and teacups side by side. They called me Professor Maggie. It made me laugh. When the session ended, I walked home through the late autumn air. The house glowed softly in the dusk. For the first time in months, there were no locks I didn't recognize, no papers I hadn't signed myself. I stood at the porch where the cake once sat, where the lie had started. The same steps Henry built, steady under my feet. In the window, my reflection looked older, sharper, but alive. I whispered, "They stole my birthday, but I gave myself back my life." Then I turned off the porch light, closed the door, and felt the kind of silence that isn't empty, the kind that's earned. I choose me. Tell me what you'd do. Drop your story and subscribe Revenge Stories Women 65 Plus USA.